The rain had continued since early morning, almost as if the sky shared my grief. The cemetery was still, the air thick with the smell of wet soil and newly placed flowers. I stood beside my husband's coffin, my umbrella shaking in my unsteady hand. The man who had supported me through every hardship now rested quietly beneath polished wood, yet the world moved on. People murmured their condolences, their faces softened by my tears, and eventually they drifted away until only my son and I remained. Daniel didn't shed a tear. He didn't even look upset. His face stayed blank, almost uninterested, scrolling through his phone even during the prayers. I tried to remind myself that everyone processes loss differently, that maybe he was masking his emotions. But somewhere inside me, something had already begun to shift. When we returned home, the house felt unfamiliar. My husband's shoes sat by the door. His favorite mug remained on the counter. His sweater lay on the couch exactly where he had last placed it. Everything still carried his presence. But Daniel stayed in his room with the door closed, acting as if nothing outside mattered anymore. For days, I moved through the house like a shadow, cleaning, folding, staring at empty chairs and silent rooms. I waited for my son to sit with me, to ask if I had eaten, to simply take my hand the way a child might when the surviving parent is falling apart. Instead, on the fourth morning, he called me into the living room. His voice was emotionless. "Mom, we need to talk." From his tone, I knew whatever he was about to say would hurt more than the funeral itself. "I'm selling the house," he said. I stopped breathing for a moment. Selling? "Daniel, this is our home. It was your father's home, and I still have plans here." "I can't take care of you," he replied. "You can't expect me to pause my life. I have enough stress already." "I never asked you to," I said quietly. "You don't have money," he snapped. "You have no income, no savings. I can't support you. You'll have to leave." Leave. Leave my own home, the place where I raised him, where his father spent his last days. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice shaking, "where would I go? I have nothing." He pulled my husband's faded bank card from a drawer and set it on the table. "Use this. Dad must have saved something. And don't make things worse. You're becoming a burden." A burden. That word cut through me so sharply that everything inside seemed to collapse. Moments later, he brought me a small bag with a few clothes thrown inside. He opened the door and waited, avoiding my eyes. When the cold air touched my face and I stepped outside, the door shut behind me, and for the second time in 1 week, I felt as if I'd been buried. Except this time, I was still alive. The evening air was harsh against my thin sweater as I walked with nowhere to go. The wheels of my small suitcase scraped across the pavement, echoing down the street. Every step away from the house felt unreal, as if I were watching my own life from a distance. People passed by without noticing. Cars sped past. The world kept moving as if nothing had happened, though I had just lost everything. My husband, my home, and now the son I had dedicated my life to. When the streetlights switched on, I found myself across from the bank, the same one my husband visited on the first Monday of every month, always greeting the staff with calm warmth. With shaking hands, I walked to the ATM. I wasn't expecting much, but I needed something, even a small amount, just to get food. I inserted the old card. The machine whirred as I held my breath. Balance, $114. After 42 years of marriage, decades of work, sacrifice, and saving, I nearly collapsed. I gripped the cold metal of the machine as tears blurred the screen until the numbers faded into white. I pressed my forehead against the ATM, trying to steady myself, but the weight of the moment was overwhelming. A few dollars, and a son who had abandoned me. I moved to a bench near the entrance and sat down, holding my bag tightly. The streetlights stretched long shadows across the pavement, and the quiet around me seemed louder than the passing traffic. My hands trembled as I traced my fingers over my husband's name, written faintly on the back of the card. "You told me you would keep me safe," I whispered to the worn plastic. A voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Langford? Is that really you?" I looked up, surprised. A familiar face peered at me through thick glasses. It was Mr. Hale, the elderly banker who had known my husband for decades. His white hair reflected the streetlight, and his expression showed real concern. "I almost didn't recognize you," he said gently. "You seem troubled." Embarrassment washed over me. "I'm fine," I replied, though my voice wavered. He sat beside me without hesitation. "You're holding Harold's old card. I haven't seen that one in years." I handed it to him with unsteady fingers. "It's all I have left." He turned it around, his eyebrows drawing together when he saw the writing. "Your husband wrote my name here. He wanted me to know if anything ever happened to him." A strange chill settled in my chest. "Come inside," he said, rising. "Let's check something." Inside the warm bank lobby, he inserted the card into his terminal. His expression changed instantly, from confusion to worry, then to something heavier. "That's strange," he murmured. "This card isn't linked to the account it was originally made for." My pulse quickened. "What does that mean?" He pressed more keys. A list of transactions appeared, many, recent, and large. "This account wasn't supposed to be active," he said, voice tightening. "Someone redirected this card and these withdrawals, and these signatures don't match your husband's." A cold wave ran through me. Something was deeply wrong. Mr. Hale adjusted his glasses, studying the screen again, his expression darkening with each line. I stood behind him, gripping a chair for balance, my heartbeat loud in my ears. "Mrs. Langford," he said quietly, "your husband opened a private legacy account nearly 30 years ago. It was protected. It was meant to remain untouched. Until he returned for it, or you did." My breath caught. A private account? Harold never mentioned it. "He wanted it to be a surprise," Mr. Hale explained gently. "For your safety. He often worried you might be alone one day." Tears stung my eyes. My husband had been preparing to support me long after he was gone, and I hadn't known. But the screen in front of us didn't show protection. It showed theft. "There's more," Mr. Hale continued, his tone tightening. "Someone tried to access this account several times. Large withdrawals, repeated attempts to redirect funds." He clicked a key. A still image appeared. My entire world stopped. It was Daniel, my son, standing at a teller's counter, handing over documents with my husband's forged signature. My stomach twisted. I clutched the chair so tightly my fingers hurt. No. The word escaped as a weak whisper. But he would, and he had. "He attempted to divert the funds," Mr. Hale confirmed quietly. "But our system flagged the signatures. We froze the account for review. That's why the card only showed the empty checking balance." Dizziness swept over me. Betrayal hit harder than the winter air outside. My son had not only forced me out of my home, he had tried to take everything my husband saved for me. Everything meant to keep me safe. My voice shook. "What happens now, Mr. Hale?" He nodded. "Legally, the funds belong to you. You are the surviving spouse, and because forgery was involved, our fraud department has already been notified. We can proceed with transferring the legacy account into your name." I sat down, unable to keep standing. My hands trembled. "You knew my husband well," I said quietly. "Did he ever seem worried about something like this?" Mr. Hale exhaled. "He loved your son, but he did mention once, just once, that Daniel seemed too focused on his finances. He asked me to add extra protection. Clearly he sensed something." He handed me a sealed envelope. "This was filed with the account papers. It's addressed to you." My heart felt like it paused. Inside, written in my husband's familiar handwriting, were the words, "My love, if you are reading this, then life took me before I could guide you. This money is for your peace, your dignity, and your future, not for anyone who would use your kindness against you." Tears finally fell, slow, heavy, necessary. "I failed him," I whispered. "No," Mr. Hale said firmly, placing a careful hand on mine. "He planned for this, and now you must protect yourself, as he intended." He began printing documents, ownership transfers, verification forms, official notices. As I signed each one, something inside me shifted. Not bitterness, not revenge. Strength. A strength formed from loss, truth, and the knowledge that my husband trusted me, even when my own son did not. For the first time since the funeral, I felt this chapter wasn't finished. The following weeks passed at a slow, steady pace. Papers were completed, identity checks verified, and eventually, after decades of secrecy, the protected account my husband safeguarded so carefully became mine. When Mr. Hale showed me the final balance, I couldn't speak. It wasn't just security, it was independence. A lifetime of my husband's effort expressed in numbers. I didn't buy anything extravagant. I didn't want anything excessive. I purchased a small cottage near the lake he loved, just enough space for one person and a lifetime of memories. I arranged his books on the shelves, placed his mug in the kitchen, and set his photo on the nightstand. For the first time since he passed, I felt him near, not in sorrow, but in calm. Life settled into a gentle routine. Quiet mornings with warm tea, evenings watching the sun set over the lake. No demands, no harsh words, no feeling of being a burden. That peace lasted exactly 3 weeks. Then one afternoon, a shadow crossed my porch. I opened the door to see Daniel standing there. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes uneasy, but his smile was polished and overly cheerful. "Mom," he said brightly, stepping forward as though nothing had happened. "You look great." I didn't step toward him. I didn't smile. He cleared his throat. "Listen, about everything before. I'm sorry. I was overwhelmed. The funeral, the house, the debts I didn't tell you about. Everything got to me." I held his gaze, studying the son I once believed I could trust. Now all I saw was need, not for reconciliation, but for the money he assumed existed. "I heard that Dad left some funds." He continued carefully. "Maybe we can work something out. I just need a small loan to get back on track." There it was, the real reason he came. He thought I was still the vulnerable mother he could push around. He didn't realize I had changed. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so he couldn't see my new life. "Daniel," I began calmly, "do you remember what you told me the day you forced me out?" His expression tightened. "Mom, I didn't. You said I was a burden." I continued. "You told me to leave, not to look back, not to rely on you." He looked frustrated. I was upset. "And now," I said with steady clarity, "you're asking for the support you refused to give me." He reached toward me. "I'm your son." I stepped back. "And I was your mother, the one you left behind, the one you deceived." His eyes widened. "You know I know everything," I said. "The wind moved through the trees, a bird called somewhere far away. Nothing else. You wanted the money." I said, "And now you want forgiveness. But you can't have either." I turned to the door. "Mom, please." I looked at him one more time. "You're the burden now, Daniel, not me." I closed the door slowly, firmly, the same way he once did. This time, I wasn't broken. I was free. After closing the door on Daniel, I stood for a moment, taking in the quiet around me. The weight of loss, betrayal, and fear began to lift, replaced by a steady sense of control. The cottage felt like a sanctuary. Each book, each photo, each small detail I placed reminded me that my life was mine to live, shaped by choices, not by the expectations or greed of others. In the following days, I settled into routines I had long forgotten. Morning tea by the window, afternoons watching the lake shimmer in sunlight, evenings filled with quiet reflection, memories of my husband and the peace I had earned. I focused on the life he had trusted me to protect, honoring the foresight and care he had put into creating the legacy account. Letters, calls, and forms from the bank continued to arrive, but none felt overwhelming. The legal process had secured the account, and Mr. Hale remained available to guide me when needed. Each document I signed and each verification completed strengthened my confidence. I realized that my husband's trust in me had not been misplaced, and in that, I found reassurance and empowerment. I also learned to recognize boundaries clearly. Daniel's brief attempt to enter my life as if nothing had happened made me understand the importance of protecting not just my finances, but my emotional well-being. His motives were transparent, and I no longer felt obligated to respond to manipulation. Instead, I focused on creating a life of security and dignity, exactly as my husband intended. Weeks passed with a quiet consistency. I kept the cottage simple, furnished with memories rather than extravagance. His favorite books were at hand, his photo on the nightstand, the lake visible from my window. Life carried on without pressure, without fear, and without interference. Each day became a reminder that I had survived, that I had endured, and that I could thrive independently. The final lesson from this experience was clear. Strength is built in the aftermath of grief and betrayal. The love and foresight of my husband provided a foundation I could rely on, even when those closest to me could not. I honored that trust, and in doing so, I reclaimed my life. This story, once defined by loss, deception, and despair, had transformed into one of resilience, security, and freedom. I was no longer at the mercy of circumstance or the actions of others. The legacy my husband left behind was more than money. It was a path to dignity and independence. And so, life continued, not as it had been, but as I chose it to be. I kept the lessons learned close. Trust wisely, protect what matters, And never underestimate the strength that comes from surviving the worst. I was free.